So I was asked how to speak about the future. Who, what is excluded when we talk about the future in light of the Anthropocene or the Capitalocene or the Plantarocene, as some call it. And I've been thinking even of the term of future, and reading a recent book by David Theo Goldberg about dread, and where he talk about the futureless future. I was thinking about this notion of future. You know, what is a future? In Malagasy philosophy, the future is behind you because you don't know it. What you know is the past, which is in front of you, that you see, that you know. So the future is not, so there is another relation to temporality. That's my first point. My second point will be that if we think about coloniality and therefore, you know, decolonial, I think we have to think about entangled temporalities, a past which is not repaired, barely repaired, a present that needs to be repaired because it's being damaged every day, and a future that has already been has to be repaired because it's already being threatened by the present, by capitalism and racism, and of course patriarchy, imperialism. So how do we think future if we think from these entangled temporalities? So rather than, you know, okay, this was the past, this is the future, we have to, you know, imagine a new future, a future that would be, of course, with more justice, and we agree with that. But can we think about the future without thinking about the reparation? And what will be the practice of reparation that we have to imagine? And therefore to think about also what is irreparable, what cannot be repaired, what has been so damaged by centuries of slavery, colonialism, imperialism, racism, patriarchy, that there is perhaps something that will not be able to repair, that we will have to live with, the layer of accumulated damage and wounds and extraction and dispossession and exploitation that have deeply damaged the earth, the bodies of water, the river, the lake, the ocean, the sea, the air. I mean, when I read that the World Health Organization is saying that more people are dying every year from air pollution than any other cause. So it's an invisible poison. We are being poisoned. And so animal, plants, land, subsoil, seas, rivers, lake are being poisoned. The one practices would be, how do we disempoison? I mean, what are the practice of taking away the poison that are being, you know, absolutely when we breathe? So how do we transform the question of breathing as a political struggle? And we think about breathing because quite often, and perhaps this is some form of masculine thinking, we talk as if we are born adult. You know, as if we're, you know, I'm like here now, you know, a woman of a certain age, and I can talk to you. But once I was a baby, a little baby, and without, you know, care, without love, without being, you know, able to breathe, I will not be here in front of you. So how do we rethink also from, you know, the question of breathing, from also the prenatal care, the care that has to be given to women, that women have the right to care? And how do we rethink care, not just as adults, but also from children, when we know that children are not equal on the planet, that so many children are born without the right to breathe, you know, clean air, without the right to drink clean water, without the right to grow up as children. So there is no childhood, in fact. I mean, even childhood is a concept that we have to rethink. There is no childhood. Childhood is a Western invention, and therefore children have to be protected in the West, and more protected, and everything is then geared toward that protection. What kind of toys we have to give them, what kind of stimulation, what kind of, you know, care they have to be given so they can be developing full adult and with happiness and possibility of happiness and a good, a decent life. Whereas so many children are born without this right. So the question of breathing, I was reading that in some part of the world today, babies are dying of COVID because they are born with very small lungs, restricted lungs, because their mother, poverty, malnutrition, polluted air. So the lungs, even, we do not have the same lungs. And of course, the lungs also, we could talk about the lungs of the planet. But the question of breathing, which is, if we don't breathe, we don't live. There is no possibility, and not just for humans, but also for animals and plants and the waters. And waters are polluted. So the second thing I will say that to think about that entangled temporality of repair. So what, the possibility of breathing. Therefore, of course, dismantling the economy of extraction, dispossession, and exhausting the planet and the bodies. An economy that was born with colonial slavery and colonialism, the exhaustion, extracting the workforce until death, until premature death, as Wilson Gilmore has said, that capitalism is the fabrication of a differentiated vulnerability to premature death. So thinking about premature death, how it's fabricated every day. How will also, this economy of extraction, exhaustion, dispossession is absolutely consubstantial to capitalism. There is no capitalism without racism. There is no capitalism without extraction and exhaustion. Has to colonize constantly anything, the part of our brain, every part of our body, and every corner of the planet, and even today, the universe and so forth, and even the deep sea. There is no possibility that, that where to extract and where then to build enclave for the billionaire, where they will have for their children clean hair, clean thing, and clean that. So it's really a question of a form of the organization of deadly condition and lively condition for a few. And the lively condition of a few rests on the fact that for the many, they are not the condition of living. So dismantling the master house is really, and its world, and the world of the master house is a world where circulation is not free. It's free for, a few. Most of the other people, they are condemned to die in the desert, in the Mediterranean, on the border of Mexico and the US. There is the master house that has always been connected with insurance, banking, the global commerce, global traveling. It's about racial, sexual violence, torture, really the capacity of imposing death on some other. So really dismantling the master house today is really a task that we have, for if we want to think about this entangled temporality. But there is the last thing I will want to talk about, like who is cleaning the world today? Without the work of Black and brown women, the world as we know, the society in which we live will not function. It's because they get up very early in the morning and they go to clean the university, the hospital, the commercial mall, the daycare center, the school, every places, even the places of the bourgeois home, that the life go on, that some white feminists can discuss feminism somewhere. There is no place in which we enter that has not been clean. So the world rests on the exploitation and the invisibilization of that work. And so, and they are cleaning every day. And also there is the externalization of West, dumping the West of capitalism onto country of the global South, or in poor neighborhood in the global, and racialized neighborhood in the global North. So that question of cleaning is inseparable of thinking the post-Capitalocene. How we will clean the world and who will clean the world. And so the cleaning of the world will not be again thought as a in a patriarchal model. I'm quite often, reading most environmental texts and how we will, construct a new economy. There is never a word about cleaning. There is not a word about so many countries in which people are condemned to live in dumps. And the image of what is clean, the good life, and was even exacerbated by the pandemic, of what was hygiene and the protected life, the life that could be protected from the virus and everything, and the life that could live. And this constant construct that is built through images of dumping places, of dirty rivers, dirty neighborhood, dirty places, which are over there. And so that those who can live a protected life has to be protected from this, from the virus, from all the time. So this is also an architecture of, separating the racial division between cleanliness and unclean. That is a racial division historically that has served colonialism, that has served racism, and of course, gender way of thinking, racial gender. I mean, the connection between gender, class, and race. So all this, I will say, that has to be discussed if we want to think about the future. Otherwise, it will be perhaps nice dreams and certainly very important. And there are very important things being done today by a lot of people around the world, and they are very important. But I will want to bring this question also to the debate.